This is the Woodbridge Conservation Commission special meeting, June 17th, 2021. First item on our agenda is public comment. I have not received any public comments ahead of the meeting, and there is nobody in the waiting room on this Zoom call. So we will move right ahead to agenda item number 2, which is to review and approve the April 15th minutes. So thank you, Kate, for getting those over to me. I read them and I'm like, wow.
That was a long meeting.
Time flies today. Hopefully you had a chance to take a quick look through them. I looked through them. I'll make a motion to approve the April 15 minutes.
I'll second that.
And my first item to discuss on those is Kate being good and taking minutes for us tonight again?
Well, because no one else is, and we're violating FOIA. So I don't want to end up in a hearing. So yes, although it's not my preference, but
thank you.
There's only 4 of us. So did the motion pass?
Any discussion about the April minutes?
No.
All right, then all in favor? Aye. Okay, looks unanimous. The next agenda item is to review and approve the minutes of our May meeting. And I'll make a motion to approve those. Is there a second?
Yes, I'll second.
All right. No discussion. I'll call a vote. All in favor of approving the May minutes? Looks good, everybody. All right. Moving right along. So the next agenda item is to discuss the possible role with the Housing Opportunity Study Committee. This knows there's that hot button topic in town right now. The Housing Opportunity Study Committee has convened, I believe now 2 meetings. I believe, Tim, you attended in some capacity or observed their first meeting. I caught probably this last third of that particular meeting. There was a member from CUPOP on that, and she was interested in getting input from the Conservation Commission. Since we have our property evaluation tool, it seems as though one of the tasks they're working on is looking at parcels in town and sort of getting a bigger plan put together as to what in town is probably more suitable for locating affordable housing. And I think I just before this meeting, I pulled up their agenda. They had a meeting on June 9th. And I have no idea what they came out of that with. I haven't heard back from that CUPOP member, Nicole. I can't remember her last name.
Is it Donzella?
Does that sound familiar, Tim?
Not. It's a possible, but that doesn't ring a bell clearly with me. But it's just possible I didn't take note of the last name. I remember Nicole.
Okay. So I have a feeling that moving forward, as they work through their process, there's going to be an opportunity for the commission to participate in some capacity. And given that they're going to be reviewing parcels, there's certainly going to be parcels that overlap. Conservation play some role. And Tim, what did you sort of glean from what you've seen so far?
As a committee, they are just still in the formative phases. The agenda for the second meeting was very heavily explaining terminology to the members. I did try to observe that meeting, but it was, while the agenda was posted, and it was posted as I'm not sure it was posted as a Zoom meeting. It might have been another software. There was no instructions posted how to join that, nor was it available on that real time on channel 79 or on other video service. And so I didn't, and I had honestly forgotten to go back. I searched the next day for it to see if I could find it, and it wasn't there. And I had forgotten after the passage of a few days to see if it was available.
Okay.
So I don't know the results either, but I assume they just shared a lot of information about what makes up affordable housing and define the terms. What I do, I believe Nicole came to a realization of is that at first she wanted perhaps having seen the property profile tool for us to come to one of their meetings, the Housing Opportunity Study Committee meetings. But then I think she realized it was much too early for that. So I think we'll have to see how they start to play out. And then at some point, as Jason said, I think we will get a call back and asked to participate in a way.
Yeah, and I think it's important just to kind of stay on their radar as best we can. Nicole might be that intermediary that will help us stay on their radar.
Yeah.
In addition to just approaching the members of that committee.
Yeah, there were the other sense I got from it, which was your question, Jason, was that Nicole may have thought we're further along than we are in the use of the property profile tool. She was almost looking at it as, hey, great, you have a profile of all the properties. Bring them to us. And clearly we don't, and we have old data in some format, but nothing in the current format. And so, they may be looking to just jumpstart what they're doing, but thinking they get a whole lot of properties that have already been explored and could possibly be profiled in a way where they would be available for affordable housing, and that's clearly not the case. So the expectations may be a little higher than reality, or much higher than what reality is right now. If I can jump ahead, Jason, a little bit, I would think that if we accomplish tonight's agenda and are able to approve our use designations and our property profile tool, and then we plan and figure out the next step, which we talked about presenting it to the Board of Selectmen, that's the place where we can tell the Board of Selectmen that we've done this to try to make the tool available to other town agencies that are needing to look at properties, and perhaps they would be a conduit for us into that opportunity commission, because there must be, I would assume there's a liaison, much like we have a liaison, and that might be the right person to know when the time is right for us to be involved.
Sharon and Kate, this might be all new to you. Do you have any initial thoughts?
My only initial thought is that I'd like this tool to be used to conserve land, not to how to develop land. So I don't want it to then be used to our detriment rather than to our benefit.
Okay. Kate, any thoughts?
I'd like to think about it a little bit more. I mean,
Yep, that's fair.
I feel very strongly that Tim had mentioned, maybe I think in the April meeting, that, and it was kind of an off the cuff comment, but I don't know, it really sat with me that, like maybe we should have a focus of like adding to the greenway, and that could be something that drives our use plan. And so I personally would like to get away from using a document as a way to block development. I would like us to really just be laser focused on either being a good regional citizen with the greenway, or adding to our own trails. Blocking development feels reactive, and we don't have the mechanisms in place to acquire property faster than a developer who's already seen it and wants it. That's all.
All right. So obviously this is an evolving situation. The committee will move forward, and this is trying to stay ahead of the game this time instead of finding out after the fact like we did with the turf field up at the high school. So this is one of the items to keep on the radar moving forward. The next item is to talk about the Deep OSWA grant. And if Leland was here, he says stop with the acronyms. So this is the Department of Environment and Energy Protection Open Space and Watershed Acquisition Grant. It comes around yearly. There's always the situation every year where the state might cut it, but so far the state has continually renewed the grant opportunity. In the past, we've come very close to actually applying for the grant, but it is contingent upon having a agreeable seller that has a realistic expectation of what their property is worth. And I sort of color it that way because the property we've looked at in the past is the 1875 Litchfield Turnpike property, the 28 acres at the base of West Rock. And the owners there have been on the fence in terms of agreeability, but their personal evaluation of the property, the valuation they put is way too high. It's something the town couldn't actually afford, even if we went for the grant. I'm just throwing out numbers. Let's say that the appraisal was 200,000, but they were asking 350. So far apart that even if we were to get the grant, there's no way we could expect to actually go through with a purchase on it. The grant is open. I think it's shoot. I want to say it closes
September 30th, I think.
All right, around October. Okay, that's what I vaguely recalled.
I read it. That's what I think it said.
And typically they announce the awards in the early part of the following year. It might be shifted back. Maybe they'll make announcements in December, but there's a process and it takes time to go through. There's certainly other parcels in town that are of interest. So off the top of my head, I don't have anything that I can just put my finger on and say yes. I didn't know if anybody else had thoughts.
I have questions. Starting with, I did do a brief reading through that material. And maybe I misunderstood. If is the grant for what you went that you would get would be covering the full fair market value price of the land you're targeting? And that was sort of the implication I took from your words, Jason. I thought I had read that it was you have to have your matching funding in place or additional funding sources in place. So did I?
That is always the idea. Sometimes you can hide it a little bit and hope that you're right in the end. In the past, we've just mentioned that we're sitting on some money in the town for an open space fund. I think it's slowly been whittled down. It might be around 70,000 right now. I'd have to double check with Tony Genovese. Yeah. That could be used as the matching part. And
okay,
prior years, it was the grant would pay 65% of the purchase price, and then the rest would have to be a match.
Okay, I didn't see any percentages this year. Maybe I just, okay. As I said, I didn't detail read it, but okay. So it's good to have some other pocket to draw money from.
Yeah, and
you could get into a shortfall condition. And you're supposed to be really going in with the town, right?
There can be joint organizations making the application. In the past, it's usually just been a single organization who will get support from others, letters of support typically.
So could the Conservation Commission apply for the grant and just get the money?
I think we need the approval of the first selectman too.
Yeah,
That's
so
what,
Okay.
the process is that the Conservation Commission recommends what should be applied for.
Yeah.
And
So
then
it's
the
really,
town
is it really the town that's applying for it?
is the town. Yeah,
Okay. Yeah.
yeah.
Okay. So we would essentially say we'd like to apply for this and do the legwork and fill out the paperwork and then take it to them through some approval. Is that a known approval process for us?
It's a fairly straightforward, at least from the
Yeah.
conservation standpoint. We make the recommendation, we present the case to the Board of Selectmen, they vote up or down. If they vote in favor of it, then the Conservation Commission can work with the town to draft the grant application.
Right.
I worked with Betsy in years past.
Okay, well, that's some of the process questions I was asking, I guess. So really, if it's got to go through the Board of Selectmen through summertime, it's got to be done pretty darn quickly.
And as I mentioned, it's something comes up around every year around this time. And I don't see it going away, but there's always the specter of fear that
Yeah.
the
Okay.
state's going to cut back on funding and they're going to eliminate it.
Yeah.
So it's not, you can't 100% count on it coming around next year. I would say you can 95% count on it coming around next year.
Yeah, okay. So, but the key you said is a willing buyer at a price that you've, pretty much what it's going to be
Right. And there have to be appraisals done to the property
before the
as part of the application
part of the application.
to
Okay.
just prove that
And
there's value there.
and then we don't have money to pay for an appraisal, so that would need to come from the town.
Yeah, it comes, I think we paid it out of the open space fund the last time we went through the process.
Okay.
so Jason, am I correct in sort of assuming that if we, over the course of, if we were to really have a direct idea of what we wanted, we could possibly go for it this season, but maybe wiser would be to start really thinking about it and anticipate doing it for next year. If we had a piece of land that fit the criteria that someone was willing to sell it.
Yes. Yep.
Yep. And that harkens back to maybe the last subject, Kate's comment, the open space plan, because if we look at our priorities for the year, Kate, we're working our way through in the open space, I'm saying open space plan. I used the wrong terminology. The Greenway, thank you. Lost it. Looking at the Greenway extensions was I believe our next priority for this year. And in fact, I was going to bring it up later on as a question for Jason on sort of approach on that. How do we think about that? Which I would like to do later in the meeting. But and that would be appropriate. If we can get to that, then we can get our ducks in a row and be ready perhaps for next year, as Sharon said. If there's something we can target and then start to have discussions.
I think the land trust is interested in some of those same ideas, so we could maybe partner with them for that.
Yes.
If that buyer was more realistic in their price. The seller.
And it's definitely, an application, since it comes around every year. It's great to have that mindfulness throughout the year. So keeping your eyes open. It also comes down to timing as well.
Yeah.
Sometimes something comes up and it's gone before you have the chance.
Yeah.
It doesn't line up with the grant.
But this particular property has been sitting out there like this for what, 10 years?
Oh, 25.
25, okay. I didn't want to exaggerate.
And conservation has been after it for all those years. So it's that unicorn that we keep trying to capture.
Yeah. And
Jason, have you met the people who own it?
I have not. No.
Has anyone met them? I mean, are they people that we could talk to again?
Betsy has been the go-to for all of the work on that property. The town could designate conservation, but I think in the past there's been a little hesitancy to have a non-town administrator get into a negotiation with an owner.
Mm-hmm.
So it,
Well,
it kind of depends upon, the administration of the town at the time. Sometimes there's more comfort to have a volunteer from the community go out and have these conversations, trusting that volunteer is doing the right thing by the town. So it varies.
Well, yeah. Yeah, my understanding is that it's a pretty what do I want to say, a number of owners, not just one.
Correct. This particular one, yeah, it was one owner, but when he passed away, it went to multiple people, and that's when
So there's a little complexity there, Sharon, because of the different, you gotta get agreement among a number of people. Be interesting to maybe have a different town organization take a whack at it. If it ends up with the same result, maybe the owners have, and I'm making this up, of course, in case there's some discord between the owner and the town. It might be better to have the land trust talk to try to be the buyer.
And talking about having multiple players in any sort of arrangement, in terms of funding. So the town has some money. It is possible to have, as I mentioned at the start, multiple organizations on the application, or a single applicant saying, we have a guarantee of X amount of funds from this organization,
right,
to help bolster the overall grant application. It's a strong grant application, and I think we do have a number of parcels in our town that are good candidates. That one on Litchfield Turnpike is really good because it's water protection. It is surrounded by already protected properties. It extends our greenway, and there's already some existing trails on it. I mean, there's a lot going for it. It's just a hard one to actually nail down.
Yeah.
So if you or anybody that you know of has other parcels of interest, bring them up and think about it. All right, I'm going to move us along. The next item is the update on the draft use designations of open space. So this is a document that we've worked on for the last few months. And Tim and I took it to Coopop. Feels like forever ago, but I think it was only 3 weeks ago.
Yes, it does.
They liked it. They didn't really provide a whole lot of input, as I recall.
It did not.
So I'm taking the approach, no news is good news. So let's just move forward with it. I had sent around the latest draft. I think Tim wanted to mention a few things about it, so I'm going to pass it over to Tim.
Okay.
I don't know if you want to share your screen, Tim.
Yes, I do.
You should be all set.
Fortunately, I may not have cleaned up my desktop before. So this, hopefully you're seeing the property use designations and protections. The challenge with time going by here month to month is that I do not believe there's any change in this document since the last time we discussed it. The one item I did want to discuss today is we still had this note in here about needing assessment if the town can do this. Since we did establish a goal last time of trying to come to the finish line with this document tonight, my suggestion is that we remove the note, leave this in. When we bring it to the Board of Selectmen, if the town council says, no, we don't do that, then we have a mechanism to change the document. And that, in fact, reminds me of what may be the change in this document. I did put in a paragraph this paragraph, I think, was changed from the last time.
Yep.
About who would be this, how would changes get made? So that's the significant change.
And you have a typo on the third line at the start of it.
Proposed additions or changes to property use designations or.
Or,
Thank you. Or.
yeah, because I think this came up. I think Coopop had also wondered who manages this document, who's in charge of it. So I think that's
And that may have been why I changed it. That's logical with what happened. It changed since the last time we reviewed it. So,
and since it's a document that we sort of have initiated and are really using more than anybody else, I think it's worth mentioning that we are the stewards of it for the time being.
I may have added the footer here prepared by the Conservation Commission just to make it clear.
Yeah.
And then, as I said, the note, my suggestion is just leave it so that we don't have an open item on the document, and we'll let the town council tell us whether we need to change the document, because we won't ever use that.
I'm okay with taking out that note. I'm also okay with taking the whole thing out or leaving it in. If we leave it in and don't get any feedback from town council, like you said, it might not be ever used. You might find the acronym TOP nowhere. It may never appear.
Yeah, it might, but if he says, it is possible to protect, the Fitzgerald property, if we do an ordinance, maybe that could be real.
That could be.
Yeah,
Yeah.
That was.
So I think.
Is everybody okay if we just strike this for now? I see Kate nodding her head.
Yeah.
Sharon, you're okay?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so we'll take that out. And with that, and as long as I save it, I think we're ready to entertain a motion to adopt this. Jason, I'll sort of roll back to you as how proper protocol for adopting.
Well, anybody can make a motion.
Oh.
I will make the motion that we adopt the property use designation and protection type document and present it to the Board of Selectmen at our next opportunity.
I will second that.
And I just want to clarify, if we find that we want to evolve it to be more appropriate or more effective, we can make some modifications and edits even after this. Is that true?
That's what this paragraph was added for.
Okay. Great.
And to make sure that we could, we would make them at our regularly scheduled meetings and vote on them to adopt or not.
All right, I approve.
Okay. Any other discussion on this? All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Unanimous.
Bob, Tim, and Jason.
Okay.
All right. The next item, it goes hand in hand, is the update on the revised, and on the agenda, I put the wrong name. So on my notes, the draft property profile tool, not the property rating tool, property profile tool, because Tim likes alliteration.
Well, I more than liking alliteration, I didn't like the fact that we had different names in different places for the same tool. So we ended up with the
What is the official name? Property
profile tool.
I also like that name because it gives it a little more flexibility in what it's intended.
Has anyone looked at the land trust and how they've done this? Because I saw it from Chris, and I like that, and I'm wondering if I know in some ways we'd like to just adopt this, but I'm wondering if we could look at that one and look at this, since we might want to do properties together and see if we're in alignment with their tool. What do you guys think of that?
I obviously am very much in agreement to do that. Sharon, Chris and I have exchanged multiple emails, multiple versions of our tools.
So you feel pretty informed about the land trust tool?
Yes, and
Okay.
I have the latest version of the land trust tool.
Okay.
That started with Jason and I, and one of the members of their small committee that Chris is working with had approached us as we walked the property and mentioned that they were going to do this. So early on, before they really even got started, we said, here's what the way we're going. And they had a document that was their foundation, that was, I think, a previous Conservation Commission document. So there are a lot of similarities. What they're really not doing is anything on our left-hand side here. They I think would have the property location, but that's about it. They're not doing this level of research. Their tool is mostly this set of attributes. And one of the changes I've made since the last time you've seen the tool is to, and that when I mentioned that their basis was an original conservation document, I added it was, at the time, it was 1 through 13, I think, attributes that they were acquiring. So I lined up their document, Sharon, with our document, and I had the number for every attribute we had that they had. I put the numbers on so we could compare the documents, and I could show them we're using most of the same attributes. Because my pitch to them was, gee, we'd really love to get to a common tool so that we can exchange information. That if you do it,
right? Okay, well, that's
an assessment and you're willing to share, at least it can come into the town's inventory of properties. So recently they changed from numbers to letters. I'm not sure why. They have that original tool had aquifer protection on it, and they dropped that. I only speculate that they thought it perhaps was in this item.
Under that, okay.
And then we have some attributes that they're not interested in, or not within their charter. Their charter is narrower than ours, perhaps. It seems to me their use of the tool is for those situations where they may have a couple of properties or 3 properties, and they're trying to decide how to prioritize their spending. And so their plan, as I understand it, is to give their tool to all the members doing the assessment individually, let them fill it in. And of course, their list just has the attribute. They have a name on it as well, and then just a score. And they have a little legend that tells you, how to score each item. What score you give it. And so we're going to talk about this in a few minutes. So they're missing this column altogether, for instance. So it is a nice, simple tool, and we may decide not to do some of what's here. That's the discussion for tonight. But in the end, they end up with a score, and then they're going to, as they do it individually, then they'll get together and kind of consensus on what the numbers really should be. And they'll do that for the properties they're assessing, and then be able to compare them to each other.
You're reminding me, the piece that I thought might be interesting to integrate into this is, I think for each one of them, they have a scale, like a 1 through 3 of how much it is valuable. And I don't know if we think that, you know, it adds acreage. Does it add a lot of acreage? Does it have some acreage? Might that help us discern more, or might that just be more confusing? I'm not sure. I was just interested. So what do you have a thought, Tim?
And so the scale I think you're talking about, and oh, excuse me, perhaps I need to share this. I have to share a different screen here. So give me a moment, please. This might be it. So Sharon, is that the sheet?
I'm not even sure because I just looked at it. I
Okay.
think it's the general characteristics, yeah, but I'm not positive if that's the sheet. I just
Here's
like our sheet. I'm wondering.
Yeah, this is what Chris sent me
Okay.
a week or so ago, and I think this is your 0 to 3, and doesn't.
I don't think I see the whole screen on my thing. So.
Oh, am I not sharing this properly, Jason?
No, I think it's just
You got
me.
it. You got it, Tim.
Okay. Sharon, I'm wondering why you're not seeing this.
Because I just need to open it up and make it a larger window, I think.
Yeah, I don't have a capability to make this.
I just did it.
Okay.
I
was saying, I think this is the scoring you were talking about.
Yeah. I think I saw it in its developmental stage a little more than that. But that's my question is, in our scoring, when it says it has wetlands or it has this, do we want to in any way rank how much wetlands is important, or we just want to note that that's a part of it?
Well,
I guess our score on the other side gets some of that done.
Yeah.
Okay.
And just to make sure, I'm sharing the Excel now, our tool.
Yeah, now I see all of it. I'm sorry. I think I didn't see all of it before.
Okay, so and that's the very discussion for tonight. The way this was drafted, this contains inland wetlands. And let me, I'm sorry, I can make this bigger. I thought I could make this bigger on my side. I hit the wrong button. Excuse me.
Not that button. There you go.
Yeah. I just wanted to make it a little easier for everybody to read. So it contains inland wetlands, and we were going to adjust the score perhaps based upon what percentage of wetlands was on that particular parcel.
Yep.
Now, and I wanted to verify, number one, is still the right approach, and two, are these the right numbers? Is it, do you want to go more than 75% to get a 9 and, adjust this middle tier? So these are numbers I have no scientific basis how they were constructed. I just not randomly, but it was just my first thought on it. But I don't know if those are the right numbers. And
I think they look fine. I'm definitely, since I had originally drafted a similar tool to this one where there were different scales based upon percent of wetland, percent of forest, size of the property by acreage, etc. So there were varying numbers.
Okay.
I like it. It goes well with my logical engineering brain, but it does make it a little more complex, which has also held us back a little bit in the past. But I think it's important. I think it's important to have a scale. And
and the other way to do this, achieve the same end, perhaps, and simplify it by getting rid of this column, is to have, instead of one item for wetlands, have 3. So contains greater than 50% wetland cover. And then you do that item. And the second item contains 25 to 49. And the third item contains less than 25%. So and that just simplifies it. So you're not looking at 4 columns or 5 columns. You're looking at just one less without all these numbers here and so forth.
So my concern with this is that as soon as, I mean, having been on the Wetlands Commission, as soon as you have some wetlands, even if it's a small percentage, it affects the environment quite a bit around it. And it makes it valuable to me, close to a 9, even if it's a 25% wetlands or 15% wetlands, versus I would think even more, possibly more important would be farming activities. Is this the whole land farmed or just one little part farm? So I can see, whereas to me, wetlands, to get to the 9 would be pretty easy if it had any wetlands. But the farming, it could be just a fourth of the whole piece of land is farmed. And does that get it to 9? Whereas you have to have 50% of the wetlands before you get it to the 9.
Okay.
So I think it could skew it in thinking that wetlands doesn't get you up to 9, but a little bit of woodland or a little bit of farming could get you up to 9, where the wetlands is probably the most valuable type of thing
Okay.
to protect.
Sharon, is there any amount of wetlands, any percent, 1%, 2%, where you say it deserves a lesser score than if it has 50% of it?
Yeah. I just
Where is that? Where is that break point?
I just think it would be unlikely that anything would have 50% wetlands unless it was a marsh or something.
Okay.
So I think a lot of pieces would have a stream going through it, but the percentage of it would be fairly small, even though it's a pretty critical piece of the topography.
So what?
So I'm just trying to figure out how to render that so it sort of is reflects the importance of that wetlands, like to me. But it's a good question. I'd say 25% would get me up to, I mean, if it's a it's a huge piece of land, maybe less. But I think to me, the 9 would be 25% pretty easily. I mean, that's a lot of wetlands relative to most pieces of land around here. And it would make it a pretty important environmental piece of land to me.
So, all right, I want to draft what your thoughts are, and then we can compare them. And
okay, well,
and
maybe
try to come to consensus.
25, 12, and 4 or something, being the different criteria, because it's very rare that we'd find a piece of wetland.
Do it this way and copy.
But I'm open to other people's thoughts about it too. I just haven't seen we made a lot of jurisdictions because there was wetlands and then there's the 100-foot buffer zone, and that's all considered protected area.
Yeah.
So it adds a lot more than the actual wetlands to how we evaluated land that had some wetlands on it when we were trying to protect it as part of the.
I have a question about a different section. So if you just want to signal when we're ready to move.
Okay. Well, let's see if we can get a consensus on where these numbers should be.
Well, this is also something we can also change too as we get more educated about the land.
Well, yeah, yes, but I, we need to put a stake in the ground, I guess, and then go back to the when we go, because we'd like to go to the Board of Selectmen with both tools together. I think would make sense. So, and Sharon, I'm going to say I'm willing to defer to your knowledge and expertise in this area. As I said, I made up the numbers, and so, Jason, you have any further thought?
I think I'll also defer to Sharon, but I'll mention that when I did with the prior tool that was developed, went through a handful of properties. Sharon's right. The amount of wetlands on properties, unless you're dealing with something like Knoll's Pond, which is a pond, the amount of wetlands on properties is very small. I just took a quick look at my prior work. The property we talked about earlier at the base of West Rock has West River running through it. And it's about, I would say 40% wetland, that property. And that's unusual.
Yeah, that's a pretty wet piece. So I would guess.
That's unusual.
So,
Yeah, no, I'm trying to look at a piece of property for the Park Association that I think is up in the 80% wetlands, but
yeah,
it has sort of a vernal pond in the middle and lots of wetlands around it, and then a little around the edges of the property, there are some places you could actually walk.
That would be valuable, right?
Yeah.
I guess maybe in commissions to come, we might want to, I mean, like Kate's going to bring up something else, but I think even historic sites, you know, if it's a 20 piece of, you know, does it get a 9 even if it has a little?
And this is exactly what I wanted to go through tonight, each and every item, and saying, is it binary, yes or no, or does it need a distinction like the wetland ones we just did? So let me see. So we're everybody's good on the wetlands now?
Yeah.
I'm gonna erase the old one. We'll go
Yeah.
with Sharon's. Okay. So do we want to go to Kate's, or
Yeah.
want to go in order?
Let's jump over to Kate.
I'd like to strike the may support future multifamily affordable housing section. I don't think we should be awarding points and acquiring property to block that. I think that's out of our purview. That's zoning.
I agree with that.
Yes, I was, the word block caught my ear. I never envisioned that we would be trying to acquire property to block something else.
I think if it's on the list as an attribute that we're scoring, just in the same way that, J there is it under development pressure? Those 9 points add to the score of making it a property that we want. And so I'm uncomfortable with language in there that specifically cites blocking affordable and multifamily housing. It feels like it's blocking it to me.
What? Okay, and I don't understand how
What
it's
would be-
blocking it.
Well, what would be the difference? Like, why does it have to be multifamily or affordable? I mean, if we're trying to block it from being developed, then why are we specifying multifamily development or affordable housing development versus just regular development?
Oh.
I think
Go
that's a
ahead,
good
Jason.
point. I think that's a good point. I think this was put on as an item because it had come up recently and there was that committee being formed. I think in a broader sense, I think Kate's right that the development pressure really covers this particular topic without being so specific. Also, specific to that point.
Yeah.
And given the very sensitive nature of this.
Okay. So
it could, color this tool as something that it's not.
Well, I guess I may have a different view of what the tool is than I'm sensing from the rest of you. To me, the tool was something that could be used by multiple town entities in evaluating land in the town of Woodbridge. That the charter of the Conservation Commission let me state it in the positive way, is to recommend to the Board of Selectmen the use of the natural resources within town, including land. And there may be times where the best use of a natural resource in town, a piece of land, is for something other than pure open space.
Yeah, but that's not our job either.
Well, that's what the charter says that we're supposed to do. We're supposed to recommend to the Board of Selectmen the use of the natural resources in town. So I don't understand how that's not our job.
But when you're saying this, if we were to give this a high mark, it would actually add to us wanting to acquire it for conservation, not for affordable housing.
Well, we might not want to acquire it for conservation, but somebody else looking at the profile of the property may say this is a good piece of property because to used for affordable housing because it fits what's needed for affordable housing, and it doesn't have wetlands, and it's not aquifer protection or farming area, and it may be low in those attributes and high in this attribute, and that's the type of candidate you would, because there is going to be affordable housing in town. So that's, you want those where the attributes are high for the affordable housing types of things and low on some of the others. Those are the ones you want them to grab, not to be grabbing things that would be, items that would help fill our greenway. So yeah, I'm looking at our charter. It is, and knowing that there are things going to happen in town like cell towers, apparently solar farms. You want to be able to, find the pieces that should be used for those purposes while preserving the best of the for open space. Otherwise, I think we're just denying what's going to happen anyway. I mean, the Housing Opportunity Commission is going to look at land and they're going to try to find places to put, from what I understand, they're going to try to find places to put affordable housing and development. So it is going to happen that at least they're going to look at it. Whether they can get a developer or not, that's a whole different question. But so we can ignore it, but that's not what our charter says we should be doing.
I don't think I'm suggesting that we ignore it, Tim. I think that development is certainly a key piece of the evaluation process, but our goals are, as I understand them, to be preserving open space, and even more specifically, perhaps, open space that can be used to the most benefit of our residents. And so if we're going to be subverting or in some way taking the decisions from the zoning commission and then creating another layer of whatever this is on top of their zoning decisions, I'm really uncomfortable with it. I'm not super comfortable with the development piece, period, but I'm even more uncomfortable with our document that we would be producing that would give this a 9 score if there's the potential for it having affordable housing on it. Like, why is that any different than someone being able to build a house? Like a big giant mansion.
Okay. Well, that, yeah, and that specific point, Kate, looking at that question, I don't know that it is wholly different. And
because that's how I kind of look at those two, is that.
Yeah. Okay. So for and yeah, and if I think that is.
And in the notes, the scoring narrative assumption column could be a spot to indicate potential multifamily, just by the fact that it's got sewer and city water on it, or something like that. It could be a note on a parcel.
Yeah. Okay.
But not have a specific score called out on it.
A specific attribute and the corresponding score.
Yeah.
Okay.
I think even as importantly as all that, or partly as importantly, is if we have less scoring, each one takes on more importance, which I think a greenway, farming activity are the things that we really are trying to think about. So we're diluting it, or diluting our choice, I think.
I'm going to flip over to the land trust for a second. Yeah, and their charter, of course, is different. There's a pure protection of open space. Okay, so I will strike this one. It sounds like the consensus is.
Yeah, I think so.
Okay. All right. So let me
And then while you're pulling that out, I wanted to ask a clarifying question. Jason, in your tool from previous iterations, not everything was ranked a 9. There was definitely it was more ranked in terms of, because I remember we went multiple rounds over farming, the value of a farmable piece of property versus the value of a piece of property that had trails on it or, was part of the greenway, stuff like that. So this seems like we're ranking everything kind of with the same weight.
Yep, it's a more flat tool. It's got less complexity to it. You're right. Yep.
Okay.
And I think Tim was sort of getting to that by starting with the wetlands and giving, a little bit of a scale to it from 963.
Well, I also, what is identified by town entity as desirable? What does that mean, really? Is that development desirable or conservation desirable, or that like the piece of land?
It's some town entity saying we would like to have this piece of property.
But aren't we just the Conservation Commission that wants to do it mostly for open space? So if somebody wants it for tennis courts, does that up it as an importance to us?
Well, that is a type of open space.
But it's not protecting open space. It's not protecting the environment. And once you put asphalt all over something, you haven't made it environment where animals can dig holes and you spray stuff around it to keep the grass out of it. And,
yeah, we had a pretty long discussion around this one last time as well, I think, because I had some confusion about what it meant.
Well, you'll see it's noted that, I'm not sure we do want it even in here. But, it had been on some iteration before that I used to put this together. And so I kept it.
Yeah. And I think if this was a tool that was a bit more broad in its use beyond conservation, it could be a valuable attribute. But coming from the lens of conservation, it's a tough one to say it provides strong value for it, for this parcel tool.
I mean, I don't think that I'm concurring with you, Jason, because if we wanted to put our money into it and then we knew Coupop wanted to put 3 tennis courts on it, that doesn't seem like the piece we want to buy. We want to buy a piece of land that's protecting the greenway or protecting the beauty or protecting a historic site, not then going to be turned over to somebody.
Okay. So it sounds like we want to strike this one, which is fine. Correct?
Yep.
Okay. Whoops. I hit the wrong button. So let me just quickly get rid of that. But then I just devil's advocate a little bit here. And this is, this is an attribute that has been all previous tools that I've seen.
For conservation commissions?
Yeah.
Yeah, we had a prior one. We had something about outdoor recreation, and then we had separate items around trails.
Well, I think to me, recreation with trails or walking is really different than a baseball diamond, so I think I'd like to specify
So
non-disturbing recreational activities rather than, a turf field.
So are those passive recreation? I know we've got passive and active as 2 definitions, but sometimes people don't have in their head clearly what does passive. Right. I mean, golf is fairly passive,
right?
Or is it active? I don't know.
Well, yeah. I mean,
but I think the general, at least in my head, the general idea of passive recreation is just hiking, walking, biking, maybe horses.
Yeah,
and
maybe
active
fishing,
maybe active is like
skating.
But that's my conception of active versus passive. Other people might view the definition differently.
Well, I guess the first question is, do we agree that we're sort of indicating passive, what Jason's calling passive, or are we opening the doorway up for a baseball diamond? Because that would be open space, even though it's altered open space. And my thinking is I like the idea of a passive designation.
I like passive.
I agree, Karen. Oh God, Sharon.
Okay. So let me just roll through these.
Sure.
Aquifer, as I mentioned, the land trust took that out. We're okay with leaving that in there, right?
Well, just to say, I think we are, because we have lots of septic systems and we need to protect our aquifer,
Yep.
right?
Okay. And we can evaluate that on a binary yes or no basis, 0 or 9, or does it need a breakdown?
I'm okay binary.
Yeah.
Okay. Farming, someone I think before mentioned that maybe it needed a breakdown.
I think it needs a breakdown, only because when I think about the example of the Sorensen farm,
Yep.
there are historic implications there to that farmland and its connection to the town.
So in the past, the breakdowns were active, prior, or potential. Where active farming got a greater score, previous farming got a middle, and potential was the lower.
Yeah, and this, Jason, remember, is going to describe things where there's currently farming and things where it's possible, right?
Okay.
So you have both. And I think this is saying, hey, the parcel, the either the active or the possible farming, and I guess you would really say the possible farming on this parcel is how much of the parcel, greater than 25%, and those are the ranges we would figure out. So to me, it wouldn't matter if it's, there's 10% active right now. I'm more interested, is it 80% possible? That to me would be should yield a bigger score.
Yep. So in terms of the breakdown that you've got.
Yeah, well, this is just copied from wetlands. So
yeah.
So I take, although it may be applicable, maybe,
I think we could, I think for both of these might need some more, complexity, like what you're saying, there's active, possible, past, probable, and then there's percentage, and maybe we write a little paragraph so that when we're reviewing it, we can contemplate it rather than it being hard and fast.
Well, that's what hopefully this is.
Because I even think for wetlands, like, does it have a huge water course? Is it an intermittent? Is it a vernal pool? All those things. As a commission, we pondered over those. We didn't just go on a
and that's what this column is for, hopefully to capture those types of notes. And then overall comments, of course, on the bottom.
Right. So I think we maybe leave a little space that that the complexity, or even flesh out what we are thinking in another document so that we can refer to it when we're really making this decision. So we just do it as thoughtfully as possible. But I don't know if other people agree with that.
Yeah, I think the commentary is important. In terms of percentages, my thought is more than 50, 25 to 50, and 25 or less.
And then, of course, it could have woodland preservation and farmland. So it could, it could double dip and get points for both, I guess.
Yes, and so less than 25.
Yeah.
How's that look to everybody?
That looks okay, but like Massaro Farm is 15 out of 57, so it wouldn't get a very good score for that. I think it's often.
Yeah, but the woodlands, it would
get woodlands.
Strike high on woodland.
Yep.
Yeah.
Right.
All right. So my sense is I'm going to copy this down, right? And do we want to use the same percentages there?
I'm okay with that.
I guess I can leave that singular. The passive recreational. Want to change that?
No.
Okay. Adding acreage. Does that need to be in terms of acres of how much you're adding? Or is it just binary is okay? I mean,
just by the nature of acquiring open space, you're adding
Yeah.
to it. So
yeah. So binary is okay here?
Yes.
Binary okay on the Greenway?
It either does or it doesn't, right?
yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
Contains historic structures. I heard some comment that maybe this one needs to be bifurcated a little bit.
That one gets so tricky that I like the binary on that one.
Okay.
With a strong reliance on, narrative and assumptions. when
Yeah.
it comes-
Yeah, because that one gets tricky if you want to start talking about
Yeah.
how many or
How old or how?
yeah. There's so
Yeah.
many different ways to indicate.
But with all these, I guess yes is a 9, but we don't have to do a 9, right? It could be, there was one arrowhead found 10 years ago and it's
Yeah. Yeah, there's got to be some common sense in this, I guess. Yeah. The next one preserves, enhances the scenic aesthetic of the town. Do we want to go back to binary on that?
Yeah, I don't know that.
I would.
Yeah.
Yep.
Habitat protects endangered species. I think that's
My question about that is that who are we going to rely on to decide that?
Yeah.
Do we get I mean, do we hire someone to assess it or do we just guess at it or do we?
The Jason found in his research recently, I guess on the high school turf field, that the state does have some maps.
Okay.
So there are
So we,
publicly available tools that are out there, and there's certainly professionals that you would hire to come in and,
yeah.
and do a more thorough evaluation. But I think the first swing is just to see, is it on Deep's map of endangered species? Like the high school property has got species of interest. There's some parcels by West Rock that also have species of interest.
Okay.
So I think initially as a binary option, I think that's fine.
Okay. Was doing something else while you were talking.
So the development pressure is the last one.
Under development pressure, yeah. Binary.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Well, it's not the last one because we removed a couple. So
Yep.
people of the town is that seems to be binary.
So has a sellable tradable parcel to achieve another goal?
Yeah.
That's a tricky one. I mean, because then we don't seem to even buy anything, let alone buy anything on speculation. It seems kind of unlikely that we'll do this.
Point.
And so for it to get a lot of points for the unlikelihood that we'd ever do it is, I don't know. I guess it's possible. Like we'll buy this, and then will you give us that?
Yeah, it's a hard one for me to follow. For Sharon's points that she brought up.
We could maybe in the narrative say, it could achieve more status if somebody wanted this and we could, but I don't think we should have it as every time evaluation necessarily.
Okay.
What do you think, Kate?
I think we could leave it in. If it's not applicable to the property, then it's just a 0.
Yeah.
versus like trying to rely on memory, in future versions of the Conservation Commission, that was.
Okay,
one
so
of
if it's just a zero, because it will be zero on most of them, right? So it really won't affect
Yeah.
the score. But then we should note that if a score isn't the highest possible score, it's because some of the things we have in there are unlikely to be even relevant, right? That's like it won't get 100 or won't get the top score because we have a criteria in there that is unlikely to be relevant.
Yeah.
Is that okay? It still would be a high score. I mean, it still would be, we'd still be motivated to act on it, even if that wasn't anything but a zero. Is that correct, Kate? Is that what you're thinking?
that, and I do think that there should be some of these that hold higher weight than others.
You mean like some should be 12 or something?
Or just that, like, maybe even we just color code them, so that way we have a visual of something to kind of be paying extra attention to, like, woodland preservation, active farming, recreation versus, historic, cultural.
Yeah.
I'm okay with the number system. I think that that's fine. I think, I think that last provision makes sense, and maybe it's just, we know that it's a ranked vote based on the other parts.
Yep. And I think one of the things that the prior tool had was primary, secondary, and tertiary in terms of importance. And that was a tricky thing to manage as well, because right now, we as a group feel certain things are important, but in another 4 years, could be different members, and their idea of what's important might change. So it's a tricky one to start saying what is more important than another. So having a flat tool like this takes that away for good and bad.
Are we wanting to vote on this tonight? And because this is Jason's last night, we'll have a whole new group of people and it would be tricky to, I mean, I can see the purpose of that.
That was the goal, Sharon.
Yep.
Okay, but it's going to be something that we can think about in 6 months and see if we have any refinement for.
Absolutely. I think we reserve all rights on these tools. And we're the steward of them for the town, but we're going to be the source of changes for these.
Yep.
Yeah. Obviously I've got a little fix up to do here, but
I think this document has come a long way, and Tim's done a lot of legwork with the land trust to get things in alignment. So we don't have a super complex tool and they have a super simple tool, and the two don't mesh well.
Yeah.
I think.
Yeah.
That's
so with the items we've done tonight, any item with a letter is one of their attributes. So it's just aquifer protection and the people and the sellable, tradable are different for attributes.
So this could be a more than 100 score too, right? Do we want to divide it by the number of add up to 100, or does that not matter?
I think it's just a relative score.
Okay.
My view,
that's fine. I just was making sure that it wasn't, we shouldn't choose 9 because there were.
Yeah.
I figured Tim chose 9 because on the keyboard it goes from 0 to 9, and it's easy to type.
It actually goes from 1 to 0, Jason.
Okay, fine.
On my keyboard, but 0 means it just doesn't get counted in, as we were talking about. So I'm going to probably take aquifer protection and move it sort of into the bottom grouping so that we can. And I guess I will remove the A to J, but know that it's sort of in the same order that the land trust has.
You could make a new column next to it or somewhere that says
a hidden column.
Yeah, just make it land trust code.
Okay, good idea. But
so we've got some correlation.
Yeah. If I can squirt over here for a second. Previously, we did go through these items, the sort of profile items, pure profile items. I don't think, hopefully, review them quickly if you have any other concerns or questions now. What may have changed since the last time we looked at this. We were, rather than some of the prioritization, we simplified from that tool. And Kate, I don't think you were here last time. And so we've come down to the worthy of acquisition and reasons why do you want to acquire this property? And as primary and secondary reasons. And and we did add a code list of acquisition codes.
Oh, excellent.
Why would you want to acquire this?
Obviously, I'm good with all of them except the last one.
Yeah.
So, yeah, to be consistent, we should take that out. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't see a difference between prevent development, and all I see is just, yeah, what I've already stated.
Yeah.
Turning it into a lightning rod, you mean?
I would like to avoid that, yeah. But I also, like, I just don't think that that's the kind of the work that we're trying to do. And I think we are really focused on some other really great areas, and I don't think we need to wade into that.
I agree.
Okay. Confidence levels have
Did
stayed the same.
you take that out though?
Yeah.
Thank you.
And what else?
So
I think excuse me, just the last thing that I know that I've changed most recently was I think I changed this wording and just put who was doing the profiling in case Coopop ends up assessing some properties because they have a hand in when we put together the plan of conservation and development, I believe.
Mm-hmm.
And if the housing people grab this and or end up using it, I want to know that they're the ones that made the assessment. So I put the organization here.
Yep. It's okay.
Tim, again, awesome job. This is it's very clear and concise. And
Well, thank you. With that, Jason, I think I'd make a motion that the Conservation Commission adopt the tool and with the reformatting that I'll do to even out the lines.
And present it to the Board of Selectmen with the
and present it to the Board of Selectmen at the lost the wording you used the first time.
I think the next opportunity.
At the next opportunity. Thank you.
I think the next time Board of Selectmen meets, they're coming up soon, I think, and they're going to be doing a whole bunch of other stuff that we would just be busy work for them. So
I have a question though with that. Can I just go back? Because I just wanted to ask one thing. So this is the column on the left. It does site notes, and can you go down further? Because I can't see the very bottom of it.
Sure.
Right now.
Yeah, no, unless I shrink it, it doesn't fit all in.
I'm just curious, is worthy of acquisition decided because of this criteria on the right, or I would think that we'd want to put this over at the end so that, or across the bottom, rather than it sort of reflects that we took into consideration all the grading.
All the criteria.
Yes, and a place for score and stuff like that. And
I agree with you, Sharon. Previously, because of the number of attributes we had,
didn't fit.
It didn't fit. Simply said, thank you.
Okay.
I was trying to keep it to one screen when I could.
Right, and I like that.
Easier for people.
I appreciate all that you've done. I just think that just in my mind, I wanted it at the end of that piece of paper, so we have assessed all the information and then make the decision.
I can slide it over now and
okay, that'd be great.
Yeah, and try to make it format.
Thank you.
I will put this here. The note, this is not part of the tool. To me, what makes up the tool, what we're we're going to vote to adopt is probably the tool and then just the 2 code lists that support it. All of these are extraneous possible outputs, samples of those types of things.
Yeah, I think in the final, just get rid of all of those sheets. from
Yes,
the workbook.
I will. I just wanted to make that clear. I left them in because it's been part of our historic discussion, but I will take them out of the final.
Can I just, date of designation, what does that mean? Date we'd made this decision?
Yeah, we've voted to say that.
Okay.
Yeah.
And I guess, do we need anything there that says who made who? Well, it's,
Isn't that
see, up
policy?
here I have the team who did the profile. But I haven't said who made the designation.
Well, it could be the conservation. Commission.
My assumption would be that it would be the commission.
This is only going to be for us, for the Conservation Commission.
Yeah.
And that makes sense. Other people might profile, but it's up to us to recommend to the Board of Selectmen. So this would be us. Okay, so
So you might write for Conservation Commission or something in that box.
yeah,
Just
I'll
yeah.
try to work that into the formatting on the bottom.
Yeah,
Okay,
commission.
we have
date
an
of
open
designation.
motion right now, so I just wanted to read that back. We have a motion to adopt the tool and present it to the Board of Selectmen for their approval at their earliest convenience.
I will
Presented.
second.
We don't have a second.
I'll second.
Okay.
And we have discussion. Kate, I love having an editor.
I think we jumped the gun on our discussion, but I think
Sorry
we're all
about that.
fairly clear. Any more discussion? If not, I'll call the vote to push this over the goal line. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Phew, excellent.
Congratulations. Jason?
Tim, excellent job.
Yeah, both.
Good job.
Okay.
So,
Oh.
leads into the next agenda item, which is discuss transition and commission changes. And I put this on here because, as now everybody knows, this is my last commission meeting. Tracy, the last meeting was hers. She's away today. This is also would have been Frank's last meeting, but he had a family emergency. So there are 3 vacancies now. I'm assuming, perhaps incorrectly, that the town is aware of all the vacancies. They're definitely aware of myself and Tracy, and that they'll be filled, I believe, at the next Board of Selectmen meeting. That one of the first actions that the new board takes is to fill vacancies on commissions and appoint liaisons. So my hope is that at the July meeting, this commission will meet. It'll have new faces, fresh energy, and a liaison from the Board of Selectmen making an appearance as well. It's been years since we've had one, so that's something to look forward to. The Board of Selectmen liaison can be a very valuable asset for a commission to pass information back and forth, and also answer questions. In the past, this commission has been working on items, and we wondered what does this fit into in the town? Is the Board of Selectmen pursuing something parallel? What's going on? So that liaison is there to help make sure that we're not working against each other or duplicating efforts. So that's a couple things to look forward to coming up in July. Another just mechanics part to it. We are perhaps this will be the last Zoom meeting of this commission. My hope is that we can all come back and meet in person soon. So I was notified by Betsy that I think the decision's going to be made in the next week or 2 as to whether or not all commissions are coming back in person or not. So if I hear news, and I will certainly share it with everybody, while this is technically my last meeting, Tim has mentioned to me, maybe you're here till the end of the month. So I suspect I'll still be fielding emails even beyond the end of the month as well. So transitioning out in terms of chairmanship, I will be here as a resource. I'm not leaving town. I'm not flying the coop. So I'll be very glad to help with advice, thoughts, prior documents. I'm sitting on several boxes of paper here in my house that I would love to pass on to somebody else. There's currently no chairman, but the commission does set its own officers in that regard. So there's a chairman, a vice chair, and a secretary. So I recommend at the next meeting laying those out so that Kate can hopefully escape being secretary again.
I think I would like to move away from the model that the newest person who's female does the minutes.
I think it should be the most willing person. And I will also volunteer that if I were not chair, I would happily be secretary because I don't mind taking minutes. So maybe there will be somebody else that comes on that is like me and doesn't mind doing minutes. Fingers crossed for you guys. Other questions that you guys might have in terms of this transition, since you've got me here to try to ease things along.
This is a minor question, but typically committees don't meet in August. Is that true?
It's an informal standing idea. We have had meetings in August as well. And my recommendation is that if you can do, especially with new members, having a new member come in July and then you don't see them again until September, that lack of continuity matters. I think it's important to meet monthly if possible, even if you have to shift the dates. We're the third Thursday of every month, but if that conflicts with people's calendars, and August is a vacation month for a lot of people in different ways, if you can line it up so that everybody is available to meet on, I don't know, I'm just making this up, the second Wednesday at 6:30, do it. Just to have that continuity, because there's nothing worse than being excited at your new meeting, trying to figure out what's all going on, and then you go away for literally 2 months.
Yep.
And then you come back and you've forgotten everything from the first meeting. So that's my recommendation.
Jason, you mentioned new board members are going to arrive in July, but there are, in order to have a meeting, and that we're going to, at the next meeting, let's get a secretary and a chairman and maybe a vice. I didn't realize there was a vice involved. The mechanics, though, for getting that meeting properly arranged.
I mean, some of it is set in stone in some ways because we've set out our schedule back in January. So it's anticipated that the commission will meet the third Thursday of July.
Right.
Setting out the agenda.
Yeah.
I could create an agenda, but I won't be there to run it.
Right. Well, no, right. Well, I wouldn't expect you to create the agenda.
So I
necessarily, I think some of the agenda items are natural.
Yeah.
We've set a list of priorities for the year. We've come to the end of this item. I need to drag it out again to be certain of what's next, but I thought it was the Greenway, which I have a question about for you in a minute. But so I don't mind handling those logistics to make sure the meeting comes off.
All right.
I'm glad to handle logistics, but I do need, maybe we can talk offline to get to know who to contact, who to send things to.
Sure. So
essentially,
all right. So I'll work with you, Tim, to get all of the technical aspects. Like you got to send it to the town clerk by certain dates.
Yeah.
Et cetera,
right.
et cetera.
Okay. Which email address is the town clerk? I don't know.
Right.
And then I do, Kate, Sharon, and I'll send you a query sometime next month and say any agenda items. And I guess, Jason, you're going to have emails and those need to be forwarded on, if that might inform an agenda item, type of thing.
Yep.
I mean, is there a personal email, or is it a Conservation Commission chair at Woodbridge.org?
Personal.
Okay, it ends up personal, okay.
Yep. So for 8 years, my personal email has been out there for all town purposes.
All to use. Okay, all right.
Fortunately, it has not been abused, or Gmail is really good at spam filtering. Another recommendation I have for the first meeting with new members coming in, in addition to, the typical public comments and minutes, is just go through the purpose of the commission. It's always good to reflect back on why you were there and make it clear that these are the boundaries that we work within. So I think it's worth going through. And then also talk about what's being worked on. Tim, you already talked about, let's move it forward, get onto the Greenway, go back to that list that we had talked about back in January and see where you are. And that way.
Well, I think reviewing that whole list would be a helpful activity.
Definitely.
To say, this is where we've been, this is where we're going, and here are the tools that we've, just passed, and give them an opportunity to look at those and ask some questions. Hopefully, if we know who those members are beforehand, we can send them the tools that we've been recently adopted. And okay.
I think another thing would be to spend some time welcoming those people and listening to who they are, and maybe doing a roundtable to, their experience and what they bring to it and who we are, and sort of some community building, commission building.
Definitely.
Okay. Yeah, no, good idea. Okay, that's why I'm going to send a note out and say it's time to put the agenda together, and I'll give you some draft, but you can help me with fill-in items like that, Sharon. That's good.
And in terms of virtual or in person, for virtual, I've been using my work's Zoom account. The town does have a GoToMeeting account, and they can set up that if it needs to be. Otherwise, you might find yourself in the big meeting room back in the town hall, because that was our standing room. The reason that it was in that room is because before I became chairman, it was tucked away in a small room in the back of the building. We shifted to 7:30 in person because we were back to back with the Board of Finance, so we needed to make sure we didn't overlap. So 7:30 in the big meeting room in the town hall is where you guys might find yourselves once again. And it's a good space, lots of room to spread out as needed.
Yeah.
That'd be good. It's more
Time. Sharon, 7:30, the right time to do it if we're in person?
Yeah. Oh, it's already written. I think we have to do it then. It's already on the agenda that we set up a year ago.
Yeah, and that can change.
Right.
And I think, Tim, you and I have talked about why it's a special meeting at 7 versus
yes.
30, et cetera, et cetera. So I think you can, with a motion of the whole commission, approve a whole new standing dates and times, but it needs to be filed with the town clerk, et cetera, et cetera. It might just be easier to stick with 7:30 third Thursday for the next July meeting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Anything else?
Thank you, Jason, for all the work you've done to get us here.
I feel like I got great confidence, definitely in the three of you, and I'm hoping that there's lots of bright new energy coming in that will really accelerate conservation moving forward. And I know in the years ahead there's the 2025 plan of conservation and development coming, so that work starts in 2022, I believe. So
and who runs point on that?
The chairman will get roped into some discussions, but it'll be the whole commission.
But there's, who in the town?
The Board of Selectmen sort of hires an outside consultant that comes in and visits all the boards and commissions and
Okay,
goes through interviews.
and
There's a
then
whole
they
process.
figure out which pieces they need the Conservation Commission to work on and get done.
Yeah, the last time when I think it was Malone and McBroom went through it, they were very well organized. So
Okay.
it's not a confusing process.
All right, good.
There are more meetings, but it's a fairly clear process.
Okay.
Yeah.
Do we need to wrap up, or you have a couple minutes? People have a couple minutes for a couple pieces of advice from Jason. Anybody
Words
want
of
to?
wisdom? Are you waiting for me to
I'm
expound?
asking you if you just want to wrap it, then I'll you're
I'd
here
like to
till the end of the
advise,
month.
but
I'll just call
It
and
is
ask
my
you.
anniversary, so I'd like to wrap it up pretty soon.
Oh, then let's wrap it up.
All right.
No, Jason, speak.
I don't
Okay.
know. I don't have
Here.
anything else.
No, well, no, I have two specific items. The Greenway, that was sort of been on the list of things to do for some years. And what's your advice on sort of how to go about doing that? That's the next item. And I mean, do you have any thoughts about how you were going to approach it, or?
Look at the parcels that would make it fully connected.
Do we know where the Greenway, do we have an outline of what we want the Greenway to be?
I do have a couple maps ideas that I've put together in years past. And it's more of a contiguous loop through town, and maybe some connections to try to go down to connect with Racebrook Tract down in Orange. And it's a matter of looking at where the connections can be made, and then figuring out who owns what.
Yeah.
And recommend approaching the property owners for either a acquisition or a pedestrian right of way in some inconspicuous part of a parcel, just to make that connection happen.
All right. And those maps are hand-drawn maps, or?
They're on the computer, and I can share them.
Is there any chance you could give us a little presentation at some month about it? Call in the expert.
Yes.
Well,
I
Jason, when you say computer, were they done with the software?
Yeah, I'm gonna see here. I'm looking at my computer here. Is this the one?
Yeah.
Pardon me while I.
Well, I didn't want to drive you into detail tonight, but if you have, that would be valuable for us to get started, I think.
Yeah, so this is, and currently it's using a Windows program called paint.net, so you can turn parts of the map on and off.
What paint.net?
Yep.
Yeah.
So we've got a couple different layers on here, and you can zoom in to see. So this is Alice Newton Street Park here in the middle.
Yeah.
With things outlined. It looks like a bunch of scribbles without explanation. So
yeah. Yeah. So this is a Windows embedded or included piece of software.
Yeah, it's a
yeah, but it came with your Windows software.
No, I purchased it. It's okay.
Like
so $10 or $20. It's
okay.
Very reasonable.
All right. So
and a useful tool.
All right.
So I can definitely share that with you guys.
Okay.
If there was a point where you needed me to come in for part of an agenda, I could certainly come in and show that. So so there has been certainly prior thought on Greenway and how to connect the dots.
Okay.
And Tim, did you have a second question?
Yeah, the second was for the two items that we adopted tonight, and talking about bringing them to the Board of Selectmen. did you have envisioned that session in any way? I mean, is that merely providing them the documents ahead of time and then just being available to answer questions they might have about the documents?
Yep. My approach would be to connect with Jerry Shaw to get on the next appropriate agenda for Board of Selectmen,
Okay,
and just call it a presentation of Conservation Commission and just leave it at that. Don't even you can tell her why, but she'll probably just put presentation by Conservation Commission.
okay.
And then
But
you can provide her the documents, and then you show up. They might have it in a printed packet in front of them.
Yeah.
It might be digital, who knows? And yeah, you're there to explain what it is and take questions. And I would expect there to be no more than 5 questions. Most of the time, they just kind of nod and give you a thumbs up.
How many? What percentage of the Board of Selectmen will have read it? In your experience? Which is a serious question. I mean, it's how much do you have to be prepared to explain, and how much do you explain?
I think being succinct would be important.
Yes, I would think so too.
Yeah, I would be succinct, but also, give the 10,000-foot view of the document.
Yes.
Maybe give one example of the reason for it, and then open it up to questions. There's probably going to be very few. People may have skimmed the contents, but the documents are enough pages with enough words that it's too much for people to digest ahead of a Board of Selectmen meeting. But it's all part of the process.
Okay.
All right. So in deferring to Sharon to, spend the rest of the evening with Chris on their anniversary. My last chairman's report is super short. I led the trail walk on June 6th, it was, up at Massaro Farm. We had, I think it was 14 people. Max registration was 15. It was fantastic. There were people coming from around the state. It wasn't just locals. People really were participating in the statewide Trails Day. So we had people coming over from Branford and Madison. They'd never been to the farm before.
That's great.
So I was able to give them a tour of the trail. It's about a 1-mile loop. Lots of good things to see out there. I talked about invasive species. I talked about reclaiming habitat. There was a very inquisitive 7-year-old that had fantastic questions like, what would the forest look like if you cut everything down and built a skyscraper in the middle of it and waited 20 years? Very specific and 7-year-old question. So it was a good day and the weather was fantastic. So I think, continuing the June 6th or whatever day it lands on the Connecticut Trails Day is always a good partnership to have, whether it's with Massaro, or in the past, we also used the Orange Conservation Commission and teamed up at Racebrook Tract. So definitely do it again next year.
Great.
That's it. If I had a microphone, Sherry, my wife said I should do a mic drop at the end, but I don't have a mic. I've got a mouse, but I'm not going to drop it.
Thank you.
So thank you, everybody. I look forward to, following up with questions and whatnot as things come up in the months to come. So with that, I make a motion to adjourn.
Thank you, Jason.
We second.
Enjoy all of your free time.
Nice job.
All my free time. I have so many projects. All right, all in favor. Good night, everybody.
Good night.
Good night.